Hello and welcome to Astronomy Answered Simply. Today's episode, we are answering the question, why aren't we building more low-cost space telescopes? Low-cost space telescopes? There's no such thing as a low-cost space telescope. Launching a pound is about $10,000. So even a small telescope is not going to be low cost. Now, that's obviously much cheaper than the James Webb Space Telescope, running at many billions of dollars. However, it's a really good question. It's a matter of priorities, budget. That's it. Low-cost space telescopes, trying to get a space telescope into low Earth orbit, hitching a ride on another, on, let's say, a SpaceX rocket that was launching, some of the SpaceX satellites or something like that, it's not going to get you a long-term investment. Plus, it costs money to build into space. Your telescope has to withstand the temperature differences between day and night in orbit, in no atmosphere. So it has to be able to, one, charge itself. Not too difficult. You can use solar panels and batteries. Fairly common technology. You can do CubeSats. It would need to be some form of CubeSat type structure, not a huge one, but you could put something like a Sony, Nikon, or Canon camera in space with like a 200 or 400 millimeter lens, and it would be a pretty darn cool space telescope. But you also have to have the gyroscopes and the servos to orient it correctly, and that's not going to be cheap and not going to be mechanical and not going to be easy. Plus, you need to incorporate satellite communication so that it can talk to the ground and relay the data back to Earth. Plus, you need to have access to a network on Earth for the satellite to relay its information to. So there's a lot more than just the cost of the telescope involved. You need monitoring, you need fuel to orient itself, you need ability to rearrange itself, charging. You're not going to be able to do any maintenance on it because it's going to go up orbit until it, friction from the low Earth atmosphere burns it up. So you'll only get a year or two, depending on what launch or where you're able to get it into orbit. Unless you're able to, unless you're able to afford a more expensive orbit, like a much higher orbit, hitch a ride on something going to a much higher orbit, you could potentially put it farther out and into middle Earth orbit. Now, you could get a long lifespan out of it, but the question would be whether or not it's able to endure the rigors of space. And then what would be the point of it? What would you be trying to research? Who would have the priority? Who would grant access? How would you request time? There's a lot of different considerations. It's something I've been mulling over is working with somebody like the Planetary Society to put a network of private, non-commercial or non-university or non-governmental space telescopes up. It would be kind of cool just for private citizens to be able to do research, but there's a lot of cost involved. But if there's demand, maybe we can all do it. I mean, every idea starts great, starts as... There's always someone who says, hey, well, that's a crazy idea, but it would be really cool. Well, the iPhone, somebody probably said, that's a crazy idea, but Apple's now one of the biggest companies because of it. IBM told Bill Gates, hey, the money's in the hardware, not the software. Look where that got them. So, low-cost space telescopes, you could probably build a space telescope for around 150, 175,000 for the equipment, solar panels, making sure it's hardened for space, capable of withstanding radiation, etc. But then you also need another $50,000 to monitor this said telescope, communicate with said telescope, software to run the telescope. There's a lot of different variables involved that are much more expensive than one would think about versus a ground-based telescope where you can just get go-to software, have it zoom in on a GPS satellite and go, oh hey, we can orient ourselves this way. In space it's a little bit harder, so could probably still use the GPS satellites, but orienting it is, there's no gravity to orient against, so you have to use gyroscopes to reorient the spacecraft. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and leave a message, leave a comment. Have a great day. Bye.